Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, have you ever wondered what Jesus truly looked like? You will be shocked to discover the truth about the face and skin color of Jesus. Was Jesus really as we have come to know him? So I want to share with you a little-known secret, the letter that Governor Pilate wrote to Roman Emperor Tiberius, recounting his impressions of Jesus. In this letter, Pilate describes Jesus' appearance with beautiful, vivid details that are absent from the Gospels. He speaks of his skin, his face, and the unique features that left such a deep impression that they simply had to be recorded. What could have left Pilate so utterly amazed about Jesus? These revelations were so shocking that they challenged and stirred the faith of a mighty empire. I want to share with you that I had an unforgettable experience with the Almighty, with God Himself. I had a moment between life and death, and it was Jesus who saved my soul. At that moment, I wasn't sure what was happening, but as I grew older, I began to understand. It was Jesus Christ. He came to me, lifting me from the brink of death with His large yet gentle hands. Dressed in pure white, He exuded a loving warmth. I felt no fear, only peace, as He placed me safely on the shore of lake in Louisiana. That moment feels as vivid as if it were yesterday. I know now that I was chosen and deeply loved by our Father in heaven, Jesus Christ. Without keeping you waiting any longer, let's dive right in. What exactly does this letter reveal? What could Pilate possibly have told the emperor about the resurrection of the Son of God and His appearance? Be sure to like this video, follow our channel, and stay with us until the very end to uncover this astonishing detail, one that could profoundly change how you see faith forever. As Pilate begins his remarkable letter to Emperor Tiberius Caesar, he recounts a time filled with challenges and profound encounters, an experience that left him forever marked. With heartfelt sincerity, Pilate opens by expressing that something extraordinary has taken place in his province of Judea, something so astounding that it could very well impact the Roman Empire itself. He describes feeling as though the gods had turned away, leaving him in a state of constant struggle and unrest since his arrival. From his first days in Jerusalem, Pilate felt the weight of an unfamiliar tension. He prepared a grand banquet to build goodwill, inviting Judea's tetrarch and high priests, yet no one attended. He interpreted this as a sign of disrespect, and later, when the high priest visited, Pilate sensed hidden resentment behind his polite words. To him, the high priest's claim of religious restriction was merely a front to justify his absence. Observing this, Pilate warned Rome to remain wary, as he believed the high priests in this region would stop at nothing to preserve their power. He notes that of all the cities Rome has conquered, none is more challenging than Jerusalem. With limited troops and minimal reinforcements from Syria, Pilate grew increasingly concerned that maintaining control would become an impossible task. It was during this period of unease that rumors of a young man named Jesus of Nazareth caught Pilate's attention. At first, Pilate suspected that Jesus was yet another revolutionary stirring up anti-Roman sentiment, but he soon realized Jesus was different. Unlike others, Jesus seemed indifferent to political power and, surprisingly, showed more understanding toward the Romans than even his own people. This was a rare quality in a place so steeped in resentment toward foreign rulers. Intrigued, Pilate sent his secretary to observe Jesus discreetly, curious to understand this man who seemed to captivate such large crowds with ease. When Pilate's secretary returned, he shared Jesus' teaching, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's," a statement that profoundly resonated with Pilate. He saw wisdom in Jesus' words that rivaled that of any Roman philosopher. Pilate recognized that Jesus was not a threat. Rather, he brought a message of peace and justice. With this newfound perspective, Pilate made the decision to allow Jesus freedom to continue his work. In his words, Pilate reflects on how, though Rome granted this freedom, it might one day lead to its own undoing should Jesus' influence continue to grow. The peace Pilate extended to Jesus, however, deeply unsettled Jerusalem's influential elite. The wealthy and powerful felt increasingly threatened by Jesus' teachings. Jesus did not shy away from calling them out for their hypocrisy, likening them to well-decorated tombs that appear beautiful on the outside but are full of death within. These criticisms were relentless, and nearly every day Pilate received complaints and warnings. They accused Jesus of challenging local traditions and promoting humility over social rank, something which deeply angered those invested in the old structures of power. Despite mounting complaints, Pilate stood firm in his decision, even as rumors spread that harm might come to Jesus. The pressure continued to build until Pilate requested a private audience with Jesus. This encounter would be unlike any Pilate had ever experienced. Standing on the balcony, waiting for Jesus to arrive, Pilate recalls feeling a strange weight, a sense of awe that left him rooted to the spot. As Jesus approached, calm and serene, Pilate felt overwhelmed, as if standing in the presence of something pure and profound. Jesus' silent presence alone conveyed a message beyond words, a gentle acknowledgement that stirred something deep within Pilate. Pilate's description of this encounter reveals more than admiration. It's as though he sensed a divine authority in Jesus that defied everything he had come to know about power. Pilate felt unworthy and strangely vulnerable, a Roman governor humbled in the presence of a man he could not fully comprehend. He remarks that no artist could ever capture the quiet majesty of Jesus' presence, a figure that no statue of gods or heroes could convey. Reflecting on the experience, Pilate saw how Jesus had both charmed and challenged him, embodying a peace and strength that left a lasting impression. Yet he knew that for Rome, granting Jesus the freedom to speak, gather, and teach without interference might lead to a future he could barely fathom, a future where the message of a Nazarene could reach the heart of the empire. This possibility both troubled and awed him, as if fate itself was at work, using him as a reluctant participant in a divine plan. What do you think Pilate truly saw in Jesus that day? Could it be that in his heart, he knew this encounter would change not only his own life, but also alter the course of history? But there's more to the story than meets the eye. Jesus, I finally said, my voice trembling, Jesus of Nazareth, for the past 3 years I have given you total freedom of expression, and I do not regret it. Your words are sensible and full of wisdom. I don't know if you've read Socrates or Plato, but I recognize that the simplicity and greatness of your speech place you far above these philosophers. The emperor is aware of this, and as his representative here, I am pleased to have granted you the freedom you so rightly deserve. However, I must warn you that your words have attracted powerful and misguided enemies. Socrates, too, had enemies and became their victim. Yours, even more furious, have turned against you for the harshness of your words and against me for allowing you to speak freely. Some even accuse me of conspiring with you to weaken the little civil power that Rome still allows the Hebrews. My recommendation, and not an order, is that you be more careful and moderate in your speech from now on, considering that your enemies may use pride to incite the ignorant people against you and force me to act according to the law. Jesus responded calmly, Ruler of the earth, your words do not come from true wisdom. Ask Mount Tabor to stop in the middle of the valley. It will answer that it follows the laws of nature and of the Creator God. Only He knows where the waters flow. I tell you the truth, before the rose of Sharon blooms, the blood of the righteous will be shed. Your blood will not be shed, I replied, deeply moved. I value your wisdom more than all these rebellious Pharisees who abuse the freedom the Romans have granted them. They conspire against Caesar and defame him, making the people believe he is a tyrant who seeks their destruction. These ungrateful men do not realize that sometimes the wolf disguises itself as a sheep to achieve its wicked aims. I will protect you from them. My praetorium will be a sacred refuge for you, both day and night." Jesus, calm as ever, shook his head and with a serene smile said, "When the time comes, there will be no refuge for the Son of Man, neither on the earth nor beneath it. The true refuge is in the heavens," pointing upward. "What was written by the prophets will be fulfilled." "Young man," worried, I replied, "you are forcing me to turn my request into an order. The security of this province, which is under my responsibility, demands it. You must be more cautious in your speeches. Do not disregard this order, for you know the consequences. May happiness accompany you." "Farewell, Prince of the Earth," said Jesus. "I did not come to bring disturbance, but rather peace, love, and charity. I was born on the same day that Augustus Caesar brought tranquility to the Roman Empire. The persecutions are not because of me, but I know I will face many of them due to others, in obedience to my Father's will, who has shown me the path to follow. So moderate your words. You have no power to keep the victim on the altar of sacrifice." After Jesus withdrew from our brief encounter, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief, as though a weight had lifted. His presence was like a bright light on the horizon, powerful and undeniable, but also unsettling to behold. Herod, who was advanced in age and had long held a grudge against Jesus, had secretly joined the movement against him. Had it been solely up to Herod, he likely would have ordered Jesus' execution immediately. Yet, despite his vanity as king, he hesitated, cautious of how the decision might affect his influence with the Roman Senate. Herod may have feared Jesus much as I did, but neither of us could admit such feelings toward a Jewish teacher. One day, Herod visited me at the praetorium, and as he rose to leave, he asked my opinion of the Nazarene. I responded that Jesus seemed to be one of those rare sages who emerge in great nations, that his teachings were not political, and Rome had decided to let him speak freely. With a sly smile and a mocking bow, Herod took his leave, clearly unconvinced. The Passover festival was fast approaching, and the city was already buzzing with crowds. Jerusalem was filling with people from all regions, and rumors of unrest were growing. I received reports that funds from the temple treasury had been used to bribe the masses, encouraging them to demand Jesus' death. Tensions were high. A Roman centurion had been publicly insulted, and a letter I sent to the governor of Syria requesting reinforcements went unanswered. I found myself isolated, with only a handful of soldiers to control a potentially hostile city. Jesus was arrested on the charge of inciting rebellion, despite the fact that no evidence supported this claim. Yet the cries of crucify him," resounded through the streets, fueled by the powerful factions that had united against him, the Herodians, Sadducees, and Pharisees. These groups were driven by conflicting interests, but shared a common disdain for Jesus. The Pharisees, in particular, bore a deep resentment due to his constant public critiques of their hypocrisy. In the face of escalating pressure, Jesus was brought before the high priest and sentenced to death. Caiaphas, the high priest, then sent him to me, seeking confirmation of the sentence. In response, I asserted that since Jesus was from Galilee, the case should fall under Herod's jurisdiction. Herod, displaying a false humility, redirected the decision back to me. Soon, my palace was encircled by a growing crowd, with masses pouring in from the hills of Judea, turning Jerusalem into a fervent cauldron of unrest. Amid this chaos, a Galilean prophet fell at my feet, pleading with me to spare Jesus. "Beware," he cried. "This man is sacred. I saw him walking on water, commanding the storm and the fish in the lake. He spoke to the wind, and it obeyed. Do not ignore the warnings, or misfortune will surely befall you." His words stirred a flicker of doubt within me. Finally, I confronted the crowds outside the palace and asked what they truly sought. Their response was unanimous: Jesus' death. I questioned what crime he had committed, but their accusations were baseless, a mix of blasphemy and claims of prophecy. Roman justice does not condemn without cause, yet, as their shouts grew louder, the walls of the palace itself seemed to tremble. I ordered Jesus to be flogged, hoping this act might appease the crowd's rage, but it only intensified their hatred. As they grew more ferocious, I called for a basin and, in front of the seething masses, washed my hands, declaring that I found no guilt in Jesus of Nazareth worthy of death. My words, however, were drowned out by their cries. I had seen the fury of mobs and unrest before, but nothing compared to the tempest of that day. It was as though the gates of the underworld had opened, releasing the darkness of every spirit against us. The crowd churned like a whirlwind, sweeping from the gates of the Praetorium to Mount Zion with shouts louder than anything I had ever heard in the riots of Pannonia or the Forum. The day itself began to darken, as if winter had descended early. I could not help but be reminded of that same eerie shadow which had fallen on the day of Julius Caesar's death. Curiously, this too was the Ides of March. As governor of this restless province, I stood alone in the corner of my basilica, observing the grim procession as Jesus was led to his execution. Jerusalem seemed to have emptied out, its people streaming toward Calvary with an intensity I could feel from afar. The sky darkened further, and a weight pressed down upon me, a sense that the scene unfolding was no longer just the fate of one man, but something cosmic, beyond human conflict. The sounds from Golgotha echoed through the air like cries from a world beyond ours, mingling with the wind. Black clouds gathered, shrouding the temple and blanketing the city in a dark, foreboding veil. Rumor spread that Dionysus, the respected patriarch, had exclaimed, "Either the Creator himself suffers, or the universe is unraveling." At that very moment, an earthquake struck, shaking Lower Egypt and terrifying the already superstitious crowds. Bazar, a scholar from Antioch and a close friend of Jesus, was found dead shortly after. Whether it was shock or sorrow that took him, no one could say. As night fell, I wrapped myself in my cloak and made my way through the streets toward Golgotha's gates. The sacrifice had already been completed, and the crowd, silent and somber, was drifting back to their homes. Even my Roman soldiers looked shaken. The standard-bearer had draped our eagle in mourning cloth. I overheard Jewish soldiers whispering in tones I could not understand, while others spoke of miracles, signs they could not explain. Small groups gathered, gazing back at Mount Calvary as if awaiting some final heavenly sign. When I returned to the Praetorium, I climbed the steps still stained with the Nazarene's blood. There, an elderly man knelt in prayer, surrounded by Romans with tear-streaked faces. He threw himself at my feet, his sobs mingling with my own sorrow, a shared grief that seemed to unite us in that dark hour. This man introduced himself as Joseph of Arimathea and requested permission to bury Jesus. I granted it, instructing my soldiers to protect the body. Days later, the tomb was found empty, and whispers of resurrection swept through the city, causing more uproar than his death itself. I investigated thoroughly. Herod accused me of a lapse, but all I know is that Joseph had used his own tomb, yet even he could not explain what had transpired. I ordered guards to secure the site, but when I questioned them afterward, they spoke of a terror they could not describe. He said that around the fourth watch, a soft, enchanting light appeared over the tomb. At first, he thought it was women who had come to embalm Jesus' body, as was the custom, but he didn't understand how they could have passed through the guards. As he pondered this, the entire place was illuminated, and he saw what seemed like a multitude of the dead in their burial shrouds, all appearing younger and full of joy, while heavenly music, the most beautiful he had ever heard, filled the air. It felt as though the entire sky was praising God. Suddenly, the earth began to shake violently, and he felt weak, unable to stand, as if the ground was moving beneath his feet, and then he fainted, not knowing what happened after that. I asked him how he was when he came to. He said he was lying on the ground, face down. I questioned if he might have mistaken the light he saw for the sunrise in the east. He replied that at first he thought so too, but at a short distance it was still quite dark, and he remembered it was too early for the sun to rise. I asked if the dizziness he felt could have been from standing up too quickly, which sometimes causes that sensation. He denied it, explaining that he hadn't slept all night, as sleeping during duty was punishable by death. He mentioned that he had allowed some soldiers to sleep at that time, and that some were still asleep. I asked how long the scene lasted. He said he wasn't sure, but thought it was nearly an hour until the daylight overshadowed it. I asked if he had gone to the tomb after regaining his composure. He responded that he hadn't, as he was afraid, and as soon as reinforcements arrived, they all returned to the barracks. I asked if the priests had questioned him. He confirmed, saying that the priests wanted him to claim it was an earthquake and that the guards had been sleeping. They offered him money to say that the disciples had come and stolen Jesus' body, but he said he didn't see any disciples and only learned of the body's disappearance when he was told. In response to my inquiry about the opinions held by some priests, he shared that a few believed Jesus was no ordinary man, nor simply a son of Mary as widely thought. They claimed he was a figure who had appeared on earth in different times, as during the days of Abraham and Lot, resurfacing in various places and ages. If this Jewish perspective holds any truth, it aligns intriguingly with his life's accounts. Friends and enemies alike observed that Jesus appeared to wield control over the natural elements, as if he were molding clay. He transformed water into wine, healed the sick, raised the dead, calmed storms, and even summoned fish bearing coins in their mouths. Witnessed by many, these acts stirred animosity, not due to crimes or law-breaking, but because they defied natural order. Even one Roman soldier at the cross remarked, "Truly, this was the Son of God." Pontius Pilate portrayed Jesus as a striking figure, possessing a calm demeanor and an undeniable presence that captured all attention. Jesus' face radiated kindness and peace, and his expression conveyed deep compassion, as though he saw into the hearts of those around him. His hair, softly cascading to his shoulders, was light brown with a slight wave, setting him apart. His eyes, often described as shifting between light brown and blue, held a penetrating wisdom and kindness. Jesus' fair, smooth skin and symmetrical features inspired confidence and respect, carrying an unassuming authority. His well-kept beard added a dignified maturity to his presence, while his simple, clean robes reflected humility. Even in silence, his presence exuded peace and a welcoming warmth. And so, noble sovereign, this is the most truthful account I can offer of the events. May you judge my actions with fairness. Dear listeners, no matter who you are, God sees the heart, not outward appearance. He loves and shelters each of us, his sheep, without distinction of wealth or status. In every circumstance, even when life feels lost, remember that God never abandons you. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Psalm 23:4. He is our guide, our hope, and our comfort in our hardest moments. He promises that those who follow him will find peace, and one day, a bright future free from all suffering and tears. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. Let us join in prayer, opening our hearts to his love, asking for his guidance and blessings. May we feel his boundless mercy and live lives filled with faith and joy. May God lead us out of all sorrow and bring us to shores of peace. The return of our Lord will bring peace and salvation to all who trust and follow him. Let us turn our hearts to God, believing in his infinite love and grace. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more uplifting videos.